Hello, welcome to this very special edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace, reporting live here at the Brooklyn Bowl here in Brooklyn, New York. This October reaches a milestone for Herbie Hancock's iconic album, Headhunters. Now, the album was a myriad of funk, jazz, and R&B, and it only had 4 tracks, but it's one of Herbie Hancock's highest-selling records of his career. Tonight here on the Pace Report, you're going to see Bill Summers as well as Mike Clark and NEA Jazz Master Donald Harrison take part of the 50th anniversary of the Headhunters. And tonight, I had a chance to sit down and break bread with these three to talk about the importance of Herbie's legacy and what this album means to jazz funk, as well as talk about how important the music the younger generation got out of this record and some of the influences that it's had on guys ranging from Thundercat to guys like Robert Glasper, just to name many in this few. So sit back, relax, and enjoy highlights of the Headhunters performing music from their current album Speakers in the House on Ropeadope Records, here on the Pace Report, live at Brooklyn Bowl, here in Brooklyn, New York. talk about this album, Speakers in the House, Ropeadope Records. 50 years is a lot of music. You got young, old. Tell me how this project came about.
Okay, let me see if I can get this accurate. Bill will correct me because my memory is what it is. But we're in Europe traveling, and some guy offered us, okay, if you do this gig on a ship that is docked, a boat, a ship, it's docked, you guys can play this gig. We will set you up across the street. I have a studio, a recording studio with apartments, kitchens, da-da-da, and you can make a record for free. And then I'll pay you so much for playing on this ship. Okay, so we did the gig. And then we went across the street, and all the instruments were over there or whatever, and we started to go, and we went in and we started to put together some ideas. Okay, then we brought these ideas sort of stayed in the can for anywhere from like
8 years.
Thank you. And
Wow.
and then we just didn't do anything with them because I don't know, we were all busy doing our own private stuff and Headhunters. So one day, I guess Bill probably called and said, hey man, we have this nice stuff and let's work on it. And we asked Donald, please, would you put some things on here and add some melodies and help us? Donald's, yes, I will. And then we started to form these things. Bill and I did a couple of things. I played little drums in a studio, and Bill played his stuff in his studio, and we kind of made a tune around that. Donald helped this one, that one, and pretty soon we have a record, bro.
Right.
You know. And then we did some live gigs, and so we kind of took a little bit of the seeds, germs of the ideas from the live gigs, and put them on the rhythm tracks that we had. Isn't that right?
We had one single man that we did. Michael was playing, right, and he was playing by himself. And for about 15-20 minutes, I said, Michael, I got an idea. I'm gonna learn that shit you do, so it sounds like we rehearsed it. You see, I learned your licks, and I copied exactly what he did. Then we called this African dude up from Mali, Bode Sissoko, a master chord player. And he said, man, I like this. Can I play? I want to play on it. So he breaks out the chord, and I said, God damn, I got some microphones out. Bam! And we had him on there. I don't know, in the beginning of the album, it starts with that track, Congo Square. You know, so it just evolved, and then down on it, now we're in New Orleans. You know,
and we got the Big Chief.
Yeah, the Big Chief. I was going to ask you, Donald. I mean, I have seen you play with so many ensembles, but it seems like you're not even a guest. You're just like at home with this band. It's not like it's like getting on a bike. Oh, I'm gonna go up here and give me a bag of chips or something. And it seems like that's how this whole project came together. It was like what you brought to it was Big Chiefism.
Hey man, I see
that vibe.
And jazz,
and
right.
I see what you mean about the Roscoe.
It's
bling bling.
God,
You know?
man, I can't, I'm like, you know.
That watch got a mind of his own.
Oh, the watch, ding ding.
It talks just as much
Ding
as
ding ding ding.
Well, I've always loved the Headhunters, and anytime musicians of this caliber call me, I'm always elated and surprised that they think of me like that. But I think on this record that they've put together, unfortunately I had a part of it as well. They've taken the ideas of what the Headhunters, the history of the Headhunters, and moved them to a new space. And once again, for the moment right now, it's a trend-setting record. So my hope right now is that we really can get this to the young people because it has the roots of music in it, and it's necessary for me that the young people have the whole lineage of the music to continue it from that perspective. It's always been about that. So this, in my estimation, this record is an example of that. I love all the things that the young people are doing, but a lot of them start in 1960 or 1970. So we want them to have some of them, the ones who, an example of what it sounds like when you have musicians who look at the whole spectrum of everything. And that line of thought and that way of thinking continues in the future. So I just think this is a prime example. And you have musicians who've been there and done that with so many people in so many places. Experience, or like you say, you can't beat experience. So you see some musicians and they're experiencing so many types of music and so many things. And everything you experience becomes part of your DNA. So, you know, their DNA is deep as the ocean and go past that too. So I think it's necessary that those examples and people who can do that are kept at the forefront. Because that's the way it was when I came up.
Michael Clark. Michael Clark. Michael Clark. How did we get to where we are right now? And tell everybody about the project that's out right now with the Headhunters.
You know, I guess had to start with Herbie. It started with my parents and his parents and our ancestors. It goes back far. It goes back really far. But when you look at it, it really does. And when Herbie had a vision, because I played with the band before the Headhunters also, called Sexton.
Right.
All right, and Herbie called himself M. Wandishi. And I kept saying, Herbie, no, Wandishi, because he didn't know the language, you know, but a lot of people didn't. But he had this vision, and his vision was to change from that esoteric type of music, and I'm sure his manager, David Rubinson, had something to do with it, because I guess he wanted to pay some bills at a certain point. I think that was a fortunate incident, because what happened is Herbie went out and searched for different people to come out with something he thought was newer and more relevant to the people, you know, in terms of music and movement or whatever. It worked. It really worked.
Buster Williams told me a story about how the sextet wasn't making and generating a lot of money, and when it was time to go into the studio to do Headhunters, that pretty much was kind of like what resuscitated not only Herbie, but also the direction of where fusion rock jazz was going, because that was real popular at the time. Is that a fair assessment?
I think so. I think so. I think after Headhunters came out, then a whole lot of bands went in that direction. A lot of jazz artists all of a sudden showed up playing funk, you know.
They were already
I saw a lot of those sessions.
He did it with Sidewinder.
Right, it was Sidewinder.
Or Silver.
Joe Henderson.
Song for my father.
Yeah.
West Montgomery.
I want to interject from the perspective of being somebody who was listening to their music on the radio as a teenager before I ever thought I would even meet these gentlemen. What we dug about the Headhunters was that it was contemporary music, but that all the musical elements of the universe was still a possibility inside of it. You could stretch inside of that music, as the old timers used to say. You know, it had the foundation. I always go, but it had the foundation of the universe in it. But then you could go, I'll call it roots to infinity. So that's what we dug about it as musicians, that everything was there. It was speaking of music of the times, but you could also go ahead and stretch to the limit. There was no limit to the music.
And I also look at Headhunters, because there was one of Herbie's contemporaries was the great, and God rest his soul, Ramsey Lewis.
Ramsey Lewis.
And he did that with Sun Goddess, and it seemed like at the time it wasn't completely jazz, it wasn't completely funk, it wasn't completely R&B, it wasn't completely world, but it was something that everybody could get into. How was that going into the recording session with that? How did those ideas come together?
You know, I don't think real musicians think about that. I think when you go in, you just go in and you just do what you do, and you fit in. You see what I'm saying? Like, let me give you an example. Like, to me, the movement started. Shit started to change with Clifford Brown, George's Dilemma. And you start to hear this. Bobby Timmons used to do shit. You'd hear this, you know, and only there were musicians. Eric Dolphy, that was a musician's musician. These people like that trained. Those were, you know, they listened to train. They didn't just giant steps in. So it meant something. But when what's my man? It was a sax player that played the electric sax. Eddie Harris. Okay, Les McCann. Those guys like that, they started, Hank Mobley, they started that fusion before Herbie did. Herbie just we just went somewhere else. It just worked. Nobody knows what's going to work.
Now your role came in after the record came, when Harvey Mason left. You came in and filled in, and the Headhunters, a lot of people don't realize this. The Headhunters recorded way after Herbie left the group, when he did his solo thing. What did you notice transitioning from, you know, being behind Harvey Mason and being a headhunter? I mean, you're a full-time headhunter. 50 years later, how did your role evolve into this?
Well, let's see. I never really. Paul Jackson was my best friend, the bass player, and we had at this point our wives had both asked us both to leave home. So we moved into a crib together out in East Oakland. Now we have been friends a very long time, and Paul played upright bass. We were like jazz guys. We were not funketeers. And we had this big music room, and he had an electric bass that's Fender Precision that sat in a case for 3 years. We had everybody in the Bay Area would be over to our house playing constantly, and one day he took the electric bass out of the case. I don't even know why, I just did it. He said, play that funky shit you play. And I went, okay. And he started to play, and he played it exactly like how you hear him on the records later, like out of the box. Because he played a little bit of flamenco guitar, he played bassoon, he played organ, and
he played trombone.
And he played trombone. And the first thing I said to him when he started picking off all those 16th notes was, man, if you're going to play like that, we need to hire a bass player, you know. And I'm sure you know what he said to me, right? Shortly after, you know, 2 words. And that was his style. So then he went on up to Lake Tahoe and played with Little Anthony and the Imperials. And Paul was one of these cats that would noodle constantly, like in between songs, right? You know, like so the guy, Little Anthony's announcing and Paul's back there, he's shedding all, you know, all the time, you know, like
constantly.
Yeah, constantly. And like on gigs, you'd be trying to announce when it was my gig, and he'd be like, Paul, like, please, bro. So anyway, David Rubinson was in the audience and heard him playing, and said, man, you would be really, and I think the party liked us when Paul was noodling. That's when he was doing the Paul stuff, not the Little Anthony stuff, right? So Herbie, he went and auditioned for Herbie and got the gig. So then Harvey Mason was going to leave because he had such a lucrative career in the studio, and then Paul recommended me. And I was like, I didn't even know they were going to play funk. So he said, Herbie wants to play with you. So I went over with my Elvin Jones, Tony Williams drum set. You know, in those days, the cymbals way up high. And I started teeing, man, like a dog, you know. And Herbie's like, that's great, but Tony's my really good friend. And if I wanted him, I'd call him. He goes like, I was young, so I tried to play like Tony and Elvin, you know, like, and so I wasn't thinking about any backbeats. And he said, I want to hear what you do, but you got to cool that bass drum out. So they put a pillow on my Gretsch 18-inch bass drum so it would sound kind of like a funky drum, I guess. And he said, Paul said you have your own kind of backwards way of looking at funk. And I said, well, I guess, you know. So he said, play that. And I did. And he hired me. So that's how I got in the band, you know. As far as Harvey Mason, I never even thought about, he wasn't, to me, I mean, I was listening to jazz drummers. So I never felt a draft like, I'm gonna.
You know, two different personalities.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't even thinking about, oh man, Harvey's great and I have to play. Now that thought never came to me. I mean, I love Harvey as a guy and as an artist. He's amazing, man. But we just kind of started where we were and threw down from, and then Hancock's the kind of dude that, or was in those days, the kind of guy that he would see what each of us, our strong points and our weak points were, and then he would write stuff for us according to that, and he would write skeletons and then say fill it out however you see fit. He never said do this or do that. When I used to play a whole lot of stuff, ideas, and he was like, don't do that. You know, like pare that down a little bit. You know,
You know what it was for me, because I was with Herbie on the first record. Michael, here's what happened. That groove that Harvey plays on Chameleon,
Yeah.
it's very famous.
Yeah.
Amongst drummers who want to play. Certain, you know, he listened to that and they copied it. Now Michael came through, but we did the next record was called Thrust, and Michael put some shit on there that to this day is just pivotal.
Herbie as a band leader and as a composer, what's his strong point? Do you think he's a better composer, or do you think he's a better piano player?
No.
Or a better band leader? If you had to choose the three, which one would you choose?
All of them.
Yeah, me too. Because
All
look,
of
man, when he, can I say something here? He asked you, not me, but I got to say this. When he hits it really hard and you're ready to see God, and the vibe is up so heavy you're no longer in your body. I don't know what, you know, I'm not really a hippie, but that's how heavy Hancock could bring all that weight to you. Were like, oh my God, you know, and I mean, it was like you remember that picture of Eric Dolphy, or it was on an album? I think he had a bass clarinet and his hair was blowing because there was a, we were playing one time, Bill and I, and Hancock was just bringing all he had. And we were chanting 3 hours a day, all of us, so we were high as dogs. And he was hit, and I looked up and I saw that same picture, except it was Hancock's. It was like a hurricane coming towards him, and I saw it, and I thought, did I just see that, or am I crazy? You know, like that's how much energy was.
He knows how to use the players.
Right.
And you can't score without the rest of the team.
Right.
And it was like Michael, when we would play Palm Grease, there was a groove that he would start the groove off. Even we had another tune that we did called God Make Me Funky that Paul and Michael had written before the band. They brought that tune to the band, and the first 1632 bars is just drums and percussion. And just to set up the groove and then it's just the crunch factor. It's the crunch. You can't fake the funk.
Right. One of the things I forgot to ask you, Benny Maupin was another important, pivotal part of Headhunters, that album. And what was it about his style and what he brought to the whole group? What was so different about that? Uh-oh.
Go ahead.
No, man. No, go ahead.
No, you got it.
No,
you go back.
Hey, man, you know, I'll be fair. I'll be fair. Here's what's happening. You got some guys that play certain kind of music. You know, there's certain guys like Pharoah Sanders. You ain't putting Pharoah in Charlie Parker's band because I wouldn't. At least I see the difference. And there's certain guys like Marion Brown. You know, I don't know if you know who he is, but anyway, more esoteric, more avant-garde. I think Benny fit in that mold, like Bitches Brew. He was on Bitches Brew.
Right.
Okay, now, this was more, I must say to me, I can't speak for anyone else, it was modal. In other words, you get it under the key, and you kind of stay there. Pharrell would do, you know, upper and lower Egypt, for example.
Yeah.
I liked what he did. I loved it. Train started, he even did the shit. And I think that's where Benny fit in. When we would play a tune called Slide, man, I couldn't wait for that motherfucker to play a solo. But he fired that shit up. But that's what he did. So, you know, as we progressed, you know, we could only go so far. You know, it's like the group before.
Yeah.
That's why Herbie kept Benny. He was the only member from the band before
that was
still there.
That'll do it again for another edition of the Pace Report, reporting live here at the Brooklyn Bowl here in Brooklyn, New York. I'd like to wish the Headhunters a happy 50th anniversary. I'd like to personally thank the talented Bill Summers, Mike Clark, and the great Donald Harrison for their time. Make sure you support the Headhunters album, Speakers in the House, which is now available on Ropeadope Records. You can buy it on Amazon.com, CD Baby, as well as iTunes. I'd like to personally thank the staff and management here at the Brooklyn Bowl for their warm hospitality. As always, people, I can't stress this more than enough. Please like, share, and subscribe, and leave comments to my videos here on YouTube and Vimeo, as well as follow me on The Pace Report on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Until next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Until next time, peace.